Good day, good day, everyone. This is your friend, Dr. Arle Macasiano Imperio. And our lecture today is part of the series Staying Healthy with Dr. Arle. Our topic for today is very important because it will focus on the importance of body energy. Our body needs energy, and this energy is used for health, for healing, and longevity. For health is to maintain the normal, let's say, requirements that we need every day. However, there are certain conditions where we might be having some health challenges, and this is where energy is used. It will be used for healing. And our goal, of course, is to live as long as we can, and energy is needed for longevity. So we will be discussing the natural ways on how we can maintain normal body energy for health, healing, and longevity. And before I proceed, I would like to make a disclaimer that this lecture is for information purposes alone. There is no attempt to treat, to diagnose, to prevent disease, or even to, let's say, effect cure. If one has any medical condition, always consult our medical doctors and follow the doctor. And health statements in this presentation has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. And I would like to show you this slide to emphasize that the body has what you call an energy field. And energy connotes that there must be some electrical forces, let's say, within the body. And if you can see at the diagram, this energy emanates from the center of the body. And you can see that the assemblage point is at the center of the heart. And that's the source of energy. And that's also where energy is most needed. Notice when the heart pumps, it needs energy. And then when the heart pumps, it is the prime mover in supporting the circulatory system of the body. The blood will circulate starting from the heart. And the heart is associated with the lungs, and through the lungs we get energy from air. In India, they call that prana, so pranic energy. So when you inhale, you get energy, and it enters the lungs, and then from the lungs, the energy from the air, let's say oxygen, is being transferred or absorbed into the bloodstream, and then it goes back to the heart after circulating throughout the entire body. And then from the heart, it is sent back to the lungs. So the lungs and the heart, these are the two very important organs that they are energy dependent, and at the same time they generate energy. So I would like you to take note that the assemblage point of where energy seems to be coordinated very well is the heart and the lungs. And from the energy field, it also implies that there are electrical emanations. So in this diagram, we more or less can see the flow of the energy throughout the body. Now, how is important is energy to us? Do we need energy for health? Do we need energy for healing if we have some health challenges? And if we would like to live as long as possible, is energy needed? Is energy truly needed for health, healing, and longevity? The answer is obviously yes. That's why this lecture is so important because it directly affects us in terms of health, in terms of healing, and longevity. So, energy in the human life, you can see at the right portion of the slide the body's energy currency, or you can see ATP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. That is the body's energy currency. It's like in any country, the currency, let's say in the Philippines, it's the Philippine peso. In Japan, it's the yen. In US, it's the US dollar. In Singapore, it's the Singapore dollar, and so forth. And notice current currency, it's connected with the idea of electrical current. It also reflects the idea of circulation. And every country needs their own respective currencies. So in the body, it is ATP. ATP is equivalent to the peso or to the dollar, adenosine triphosphate. Now you can see in the diagram that the chemical source of energy comes from food, and basically it's carbohydrates, fats, and protein, and others. So when we take food, we have to digest the food in order for the food to be converted into chemical energy. And when it is introduced into our body, that chemical energy is converted to adenosine triphosphate. And ATP, the body's energy currency, is the one that is used by the metabolic requirements of the body. When you say metabolism, it's actually the activity within the body. It's like the factory where everything is working well. The machine, the production, the assembly of the raw materials to create the particular item. In the body, we call that metabolism. So notice it's connected to energy. And then as a result, there are chemical wastes like carbon dioxide, water, and the metabolic activity in the body produces heat. That's why the body is warm at a particular temperature. And if you compare it to a cadaver, that means when the human dies, the form is still complete, but when you touch the cadaver, it's cold. Why? Because there is no longer energy that is moving, and there is no longer metabolism that is in place, and therefore there is no heat created. That's why the cadaver is cold. So you will now see food, uh, ATP, metabolic rate, heat, and as the result, there are certain waste products that has to be used. Now, we mentioned the importance of energy in our body metabolism. On the left side of the slide, you can see the body does work. That's the metabolic. And then chemical potential energy, it's taken. And then it creates heat, called the thermal energy. And then it leads to the proper function of the body. We call that efficiency. So the intake comes from food, for example, and then the metabolic of the body is supported, and then the output or the result of this energy flow in the body, there is what you call kinetic energy, movement. There is spring, gravitational energy, chemical energy, electrical energy, and energy that can possibly be stored, which we call potential energy. And then this will lead to movement. There will be growth and repair. There will be nerve function. There will be cellular metabolism and storage. And the body will move. It will move within the tissue. It will move within the cells. And there is the general movement of the human organism. So you will see everything is based on energy. On the right side of the slide, it's another uh, description of the energy and the body. So at the lower portion, you will see anaerobic metabolism, and then versus aerobic metabolism. Anaerobic means uh, there is no oxygen. Aerobic, there is the need for oxygen. In either way, there is energy that is being required to lead to the metabolic activity of the body. But look at the upper portion of that slide on the right side, the source of the energy. So you will see dietary carbohydrates. So you can see the bread, and then the bread is converted to glucose, and then liver glycogen or glucose synthesis by the liver. This is where energy is stored, and it can be converted to glucose when needed. And then energy is also stored in the muscle as glycogen. And then in any moment when it is needed, they are all converted to glucose. So the source is carbohydrates, right? Now, if you look at the next portion of the slide, is that the source of energy is protein. So there is dietary protein. And when protein, let's say, synthesized in the body, it will lead to the production of amino acids. And then another source of energy is fat or lipids. So you can now see that triglycerides, which is fat, is stored in the muscle and in the tissue as adipose tissue. And if they are degraded to produce energy, that's the fatty acids. So we have glucose, amino acids, and fatty acids. And then it will lead, all of them combined will lead to anaerobic metabolism and aerobic metabolism. But for short, metabolism means the movement of, let's say, different, let's say, systems and function in the body. So we call that generally as metabolism. And here is a good illustration on what happens when we eat food, because we just described that the source of energy comes from carbohydrates, from proteins, and from fats. That's why in a balanced diet, we have to take carbohydrates, which is in Asia, rice. In the West, it could be bread. And then we should take protein foods like fish, for example, like meat, like legumes. And then the fatty foods or fat foods or lipids would come from nuts, right? From nuts, from oil. So here what was showed is, let's say, what happens when you eat a cheeseburger. So it has cheese, it has burger, which could be meat, and it has bread. It may have some vegetables. So when we eat it, the first step is that it has to be digested. So we chew it well, and then it goes into the stomach to be digested, and then it's converted into liquid form. It will now be, let's say, delivered to the small intestines, where there will be absorption. And when it is absorbed, it will go into the bloodstream. So that is step 1, 2, and 3. And then the energy or the sugar will be stored in the liver and in the muscles. And then when it proceeds further to the large intestines, this is where now the waste materials are being, let's say, separated. And then eventually, number 6, it will be, let's say, expelled out as fecal material. So in principle, what you will see is that the food was digested, converted into liquid form. It was absorbed as energy, and then the waste products are eventually released outside the body. So we can now therefore see the importance of energy coming from food, right? So we have discussed this a while ago. Slide. So energy is connected to our human life. Now another source of energy is obviously the sun. So I showed this slide to remind ourselves that aside from food, we have physical source of energy like the sun. In fact, the sun is the primary source of energy for everything. Let's say for the earth. So the sun sends energy to the plants through photosynthesis. It's converted. It can hit the stone, or it hit any portion of the earth, especially the mountains. That's why energy in the mountain is quite high because of ground elevation. But the important thing to remember is that everything on earth is based on the energy coming from the sun. And we can even mention that if the sun, let's say, stops or disappears, everything will end. Okay, and energy is, from the sun is also related in supporting energy for the human body. And on the right side, I would just like to show the connection of energy with aging and longevity. So when a child is born, the child is now an infant. Uh, it has lots of energy, potential energy, and then on its own, that child will start to sit up and eventually to stand. And then when the child learns how to stand and walk, he will learn how to run. And just see how active the child is when he is able to run. He would like to run away from you. And if you are not careful, the child will be immediately in a far distance without your care. That's why we hold the kids carefully when we walk out in the streets, because they will run. They enjoy, they have lots of energy. And then the child grows into adolescence. He has also lots of energy, and then reaches adulthood. But you will notice that from adulthood to middle age and then eventually to old age, the picture shows that there is energy decline. So it seems that energy decline is connected with aging, and one strategy, therefore, is to maintain as much energy in order to delay or possibly delay aging and enhance longevity. So we now know that that is the direction, and it is energy related. That's why our topic is so important, because we are now focusing on how to build, maintain, and retain our energy level in a natural way possible. Now, here is another slide to show the connection of energy with aging and with our lifespan. If you will see the picture on the right, just to illustrate how the aging process would occur. The the child is young as a teenager, and you can see how young the child looks, and then reaches middle age, and then you will now see there are now changes in the physical features, especially in the skin. And then at old age, you will now see the wrinkling of the skin, and there is evidence of aging already showed. So we know that this is the direction. And we have emphasized a while ago that the aging process is related to the energy level of the body. Now, on the left side of the slide, we have an estimation of life expectancy. It was estimated that many, let's say, even thousands or hundreds or even 1,000 years ago, that it appears that the lifespan of man is quite short. Uh, this is different from the let's say, story that we read from the book of Genesis, where the lifespan of men reached hundreds of years, even almost 1,000. I think Methuselah and Adam lived to almost 1,000 years at about 900 years. But this is referring to when the Middle Age period was part of human history. The Middle Age period, where things seems to have degraded, and you will notice that the lifespan is shorter, uh, about 20s, 25s, and then on their late 20s, okay, and then up to 40, and then that's the Middle Ages that I was trying to emphasize. That was about 1,500 how many years ago? And then there was a recovery, a renaissance, where technology took over to support in lengthening the lifespan of man. And now, because of that, the average lifespan is about 70, 80. This is based on the study of Gavriloi or Gavrilov and Gavrilova. I think they are probably partners or husband and wives. So that was done in 2002 to document the estimated life expectancy based on the opportunity to survive from the many factors from the environment and internally in the body that may affect the lifespan of man. So we would like to emphasize the three major sources of energy. We mentioned it a while ago. It's basically, look at the right side, carbohydrates, fats, and protein. And then all of this will be converted to ATP or adenosine triphosphate as the major energy currency of the body. And then specifically in the body, the energy or ATP is mostly produced in the cell, and specifically it is produced inside the mitochondria. So this is one organelle or one microscopic organ of the body inside the cell of the body. And this is where energy is specifically created as ATP. That's why we call the mitochondria as the energy, let's say, factory of the body. So we now see here uh, the cell, the 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 blue color is the nucleus, and then the mitochondria is outside the nucleus. And then we now see the mitochondria in detail, where glucose, notice glucose came from food, right? Glucose enters into the mitochondria through glycolysis or glycosis, and then through the citric acid cycle, right? Or the Krebs cycle. Okay, the ATP is produced, or adenosine triphosphate is produced, and then it will enter into the electron transport chain. It's like distributing the energy through the, let's say, electrical setup, and then it will support the metabolic pathway as anabolic or catabolic. Anabolic is building up of, let's say, energy, and then catabolic is uh, degrading or breaking down energy. But in both instances, energy is required. That's how important uh, the energy in the body is. And then the balance of catabolic, that is breaking down. The large molecules are broken down into small ones. Energy is required. And anabolic, the small molecules are assembled to create larger ones. Energy is required. So the balance of the anabolic and catabolic is what we call as metabolism. And this is maintained through homeostasis. So, is energy needed by the body? The answer is obviously yes. We've been trying to point that right from the beginning. But here's another simplified diagram to show that the energy sources are basically three from food: carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. And that will create ATP, and then the energy is used in biosynthesis. That is the biochemistry of the body, detoxification, the elimination of waste products, thermogenesis, the building up of heat, ion transport in the electrolyte activity, and then movement of the muscles of the body as muscle contraction. So when ATP is used, it becomes adenosine diphosphate, and then it is recycled, and eventually energy is again produced. So that's how important it is. Uh, uh, that's how important energy is in our body. So you had been uh, hearing this again and again. ATP, ATP, ATP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. Is the basic energy currency of our body. And here is the biochemical structure of ATP. So it has the phosphate group. It has the adenosine diphosphate. And then when a phosphate is added, so there are three of them. So that is now the adenosine triphosphate or ATP. Okay, and the bonding between, let's say, uh, the two molecules, there is what you call a high energy bond. When that is broken down, it releases energy. So this is the biochemistry. So phosphate group, adenosine diphosphate component, and then eventually the adenosine triphosphate. And the adenosine, if I may mention, is triggered or supported by adenine, which is a nitrogen base found inside the DNA. So when is or where is our energy used and needed? So we have what you call the total energy expenditure. When you say expenditure, it is the use of energy. So when we are at rest, energy is being used up, but it is the lowest form of energy expenditure because we are at rest. We call this basal metabolism or the basic energy required while we are at rest. And then through digestion, we have the thermic effect of food where heat is generated. So more energy is generated when we eat. And then with the energy that we have, we use the energy for physical activity. So energy at rest, energy generated, and energy used up. So basal metabolism, uh, digestion, and physical activity. So we mentioned carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, right? We call this the macronutrients. Macro because these molecules are large in size. So you see some of the food that is illustrated under each category. So in carbohydrates, we have the, let's say, bread, we have the rice, right? Fats, we have the, let's say, avocado, the oil that comes from nuts, and then protein, which comes from meat, from fish, from eggs, from legumes. So these are the three major macronutrients. And then they are converted into the body as micronutrients. So the fats is converted to fatty acids. The protein is converted into amino acids. And the carbohydrates is converted to glucose. So, and then we add the micronutrients coming from fruits and vegetables and antioxidants and others. So this is now where the term functional food comes in because research have shown that with the additional of other components aside from vitamins and minerals, there are vital ingredients that will support the major functions of the body. So I would like you to take note here is the nitrogen base and the development of DNA and amino acids. On the left portion of the diagram, you can now see the relationship. You can see how complicated it is. The endpoint are the amino acids produced. So you have alanine, aspartame, glutamine, glycine, uh, phenylalanine, leucine, and so forth. There are 20 amino acids. And each amino acid is a combination of nucleotides, right? Okay. And then coming from the uh, nitrogen bases, which is guanine, uracil, adenine, and cytosine. These are the four major ones. Okay, adenine, thymine, or uracils, RNA, and then uh, guanine and cytosine. So these are the four major, let's say, molecules that comprises the DNA. And then on the right side, you can now see the effect in terms of energy, right? That coming from food, it's converted into, let's say, its biochemical form as ATP. So we showed a while ago that the ATP is produced inside the mitochondria. So if you would look at the diagram on the left side, the orange portion, that's the mitochondria. And you will notice carbohydrates is outside the mitochondria, but it entered the cell, which is the light blue portion, light blue colored portion. So take note, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. They enter uh, the cell, and then inside the cell, they contribute uh, or enter the mitochondria. And then in the mitochondria, uh, the processes like acetyl-CoA, you can see it's a citric acid cycle and so forth. The end point is ATP or energy. And then if you look at the right side, it's the same story, only in more detail, just to emphasize that it is a complex process. It's simple, but it's really complex. That's how important the, let's say, different microscopic parts or biochemical parts inside the cell of the body. And then again, as a review, we mentioned this a while ago. We're talking about energy. Where does it come from? Food from the diet, carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. So every day we should be taking these food elements, but we should be taking them at the right amount. So let's say carbohydrates, rice will be about, let's say, 3 cups a day. Lipids or fat, that will be about 6 teaspoons of oil. And then protein, the size of the matchbox, 2 of that in a day. Just to give you an idea on how much they are needed in a day. And the actual need depends on the activity of the person. If the activity is sedentary, then there is less of these food items. But if the activity is, let's say, like working in the field as a farmer, doing manual work, construction, then it's the same. They need carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, but in more amounts. And then when introduced into the cell of the body, they will be converted into energy. And they will be further, let's say, uh, degraded into macromolecules and combined with the micromolecules. So we now have macronutrition and micronutrition. But the bottom line here is that the end point is energy. That's why if we don't eat well, we feel weak. If you don't eat a well-balanced meal, we feel weak. When one is, let's say, hungry, he feels weak. In fact, when the glucose level goes down, we call that hypoglycemia. The person would even tremble out of weakness. You get it? That's how energy uh, is important to the body. Okay, so here is the same story. I'm just showing this slide. We don't need to really know the details, but just to give an idea, to show the ATP production pathway, where it happens inside the cells of the body and inside the mitochondria. But the one that is directing all the activity of the cells of the body, or all the parts or action inside the cell of the body, is always under the direction of the DNA. So the DNA is doing everything that is needed, orchestrating, balancing, giving instructions, giving the blueprint It comes from the DNA. So that's how important the DNA is. So all of these complex illustration on the activity inside the cell, these are all directed and governed by the DNA. That's the important point which I would like us to take notice, learn, and remember. So we were mentioning a while ago the amino acids. So I have this wonderful illustration. There are how many amino acids? 20. Amino acids are the building block of protein. So it comes from protein. So when you eat protein food, it's converted into amino acids. If you eat, let's say, carbohydrates, it's converted into glucose. If you eat fatty foods, it's converted into fatty acids. If you eat protein, it's converted into 20 amino acids. Now, the amino acids you can see at the top, it could be essential, conditionally non-essential, or non-essential. So let's focus first on the non-essential. The non-essential is that the body creates it. So we don't need to take it from the diet because the body creates it. So it's alanine, aspartate, and cysteine and glutamate. And then conditionally non-essential, meaning the body can create or it may need it from outside sources. That's why it depends on the condition. If the body is already weak, it becomes essential. That's why it's considered. But if the body is strong, it's non-essential, but conditionally. It depends on the condition. So these are arginine, asparagine, glutamine, glycine, proline or proline, serine, and tyrosine. But what I would like you to take notice are the essential amino acids. Essential means the body cannot create it. Compared to the non-essential and conditionally non-essential, the body creates them. Therefore, since the body does not create them, they should be essentially, that's the keyword, essentially derived from outside sources. That means it should be present in the, let's say, in the food that we take. Because the body does not create these important amino acids. There are how many of them? 9, right? If you will count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9. It's histidine, isoleucine, leucine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, valine, and lysine. That's why it's very important that we get this from outside sources, and generally it should be a part of the food supplementation that we should have. Or if you eat a well balanced meal, well, all the protein elements are there, then it's the same, right? But the point is we have to get it from outside sources because the body cannot create them. So if you're looking for a food supplement that will supply the amino acids, be sure you read if it has the essential amino acids, which is histidine. You read if the food supplement has histidine, isoleucine, leucine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, valine, or lysine. You have to check because these are the amino acids that should come from outside sources, and food supplementation is one of the ways to get these essential amino acids. Now, we're about to, let's say, summarize what we have discussed so far. We started by focusing on how we can generate energy for the body in a natural way. There are many, let's say, processes, but I simplified it by just boiling it down to 4 elements. The first source of energy is food, and we have emphasized in our previous slide presentation the role of carbohydrates, fats, and protein. So we need these 3 elements daily, but in a balanced way. Excess amounts of these can be dangerous to health, and too little of this can also be dangerous because the body needs them. That's why the focus is on having a well-balanced meal. So in Asia, carbohydrates is rice. In America or the first world countries, It could be, let's say, bread, cereals. In others, it could be corn, right? Fats, the ideal is it should come from nuts, okay? And protein is from, let's say, legumes, uh, and let's say fish, egg, even meat. But in terms of food, the food could be vegetarian, meaning you get all three carbohydrates, fats, and proteins from plant sources, or it could be from animal sourced food, like meat, for example. And studies have shown that the vegetarian diet appears to be superior in terms of, let's say, longevity, immunity, energy. And if I may mention at this point, is that it was God who created the human body, and therefore it is God who can determine what is best for the human body. And you can see the reference in the first chapter of the book of Genesis, the book of beginning. I think it's chapter 1, verse 28, where God talked to Adam and Eve, and he said, and I quote, I give unto you every fruit bearing tree, every seed, every herb, this shall be your food. It's vegetarian. But you will notice it has carbohydrates, it has fats and protein. It's a well balanced meal, but vegetarian. It was only later in man's experience, we may say after the fall, that man was permitted to kill animals and take them as food. Okay, but the original diet is vegetarian. The second, so this food will give us energy, right? The second source of energy is the sun. So I remember I showed you the slide as the sun as the primary source of energy. And the best way to get the energy from the sun is to do sunbathing. And sunbathing is 30 minutes during sunrise. From sunrise, 30 minutes. And 30 minutes towards sunset. So if sunrise is about 6 a.m., so that's about 6 a.m. to 6:30. If sunset is 6 p.m., so it's 5:30 to 6. And then in the 30-minute sunlight exposure, 15 minutes you face the sun, 15 minutes your body is back to the sun. And that will, the sunbeam hitting the body, hitting the skin specifically, will generate energy. And if I may mention at this point, during the first 5 minutes of sunrise, you can directly look at the sun. You let the eyelids as your guide. If your eyelids closes, then don't continue because the sun is too strong. But if you can look at the sun gently in a relaxed way because it's just rising, the same thing when the sun is setting in the west, right? Sunset. Notice you can look at the sun directly. That's only for, I think, about 5 minutes. But the point is that the sunbeam is able to enter the body through the eyes. Through the eyes, it will hit the retina, and then the energy collected will move towards the optic, let's say, nerve, and then uh, crisscross of the optic chiasma, energize the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and eventually energize the entire body through the nervous system. So that's a major source of energy, right? And then number three technique in a natural way to restore energy is simply rest. Generally rest, but there are five components. You rest in order to be restored, in order to regenerate, in order to be rejuvenated, and eventually this is what you call recreation. We recreate. And oftentimes the understanding on recreation is the opposite. If they say, oh, come on, it's your birthday, let's celebrate. Oh, we just had our salary, let's have some fun. Let's do some recreation. But unfortunately, what they would do as recreation is to relax by drinking alcohol to be drunk. And then there is a lot of fatty food to be added to make the drinking more enjoyable, and then together there is smoking, and then they do it all over the night. That is not recreation. Yeah, of course, we would have fun together with our buddies and friends, or drinking buddies, if you may say. But that is not recreation. In fact, it is adding more strain to the system or to the body. You're taking too much fat, you're taking alcohol that is not needed by the body. Alcohol in any amounts is toxic to the vital organs of the body, like the liver, the kidney, the heart, and even the brain or the nervous system. Cigarette smoke contains about 6,000, let's say, carcinogenic substances. Before, what was identified as only about 2,000, 3,000. Now, in the latest report that I got, it's already 6,000. The point is, there is nothing healthy that is derived from the cigarette smoke. In fact, what is more healthy is to take in clean, pure air. And obviously, the cigarette smoke is not clean, pure air. It is smoke. And at the same time, it contains the substances that can be toxic to the body. So it's food, sunbathing, and rest in order to have our energy restored, regenerated. And then the ultimate source of energy is God, because God is the one that gave us life. Our life is energy by itself, right? So the ultimate source of energy or life is God. And the technique is to attune to God in mind, heart, and action. So in mind, we think about the attributes of God, which is omnipotent, that means all powerful, omniscient, that means all knowing, omnipresent, that means He is present to all points in our universe. And one technique to attune to God is be grateful of the blessings we now have because we have life. And we generate goodwill by being generous to others. And we do this by giving and serving for the welfare of others. And we always point to God to remind ourselves that He is the only source, the only power. There is nobody else in our life. When we do so, then we will be more attuned to the ultimate source of energy, which is God. So these are the four major elements, my dear friends, on how we can build energy, generate energy, maintain energy, and even project the energy. So first, have so much energy where we can share the energy to others. Our mere presence to other people, it's either we energize them or we even deplete them because we got their energy. Sometimes you will realize that when you are with a person, you feel energized. But there are also times when, even without talking, if you are just near with a certain personality type, you would feel that you will feel weak after the contact. Others call this a vampirism, where the energy was sucked out of you. And one way to prevent that is to have so much energy yourself. And the energy that you have is the vitality that surrounds you. That's why you will notice the first slide I show you. There is an electrical emanation coming from the body. You may call this aura, if you may say. But that's the best protection we can have by having it strong and full of vitality. Okay, so and remember that the sun is the primary source of energy. So when we focus on these four areas, food, sunbathing, proper rest, and God, or being spiritual, then we are able to build energy in a natural way. And just to show you in this slide, my dear friends, the intricacies of the nervous system. So the nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord. And you will notice on the left side, you have the brain and the spinal column, the vertebrae, and then the nerves coming from the brain. You will notice it is connected to all the organs of the body. So there is the left group and the right group. We call this the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. The nervous system is divided into two major divisions, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. And then we have the central nervous system, and then they are distributed as parasympathetic or sympathetic, directed to the different organs of the body. That's why neurology or study of the nervous system is one of the exciting sciences, because you will see, just look at the diagram, it's complex, it's simple but complex at the same time. That's why if you would like to trace the electrical pathway from let's say the toe up to the brain, you can see the enormous electrical circuitry that it will pass through. On the right side, you can now see the medical symbol, the caduceus. So notice that it symbolizes the nervous system. And then you have the central, let's say, stem. And then you have the right and left wing to show that the movement is towards, the movement is upwards, that it will fly going up. And then you now have two serpents properly intertwined, balanced. These are the, let's say, sympathetic and parasympathetic. In some traditions, they call this the Ida and Pingala. But what I would like you to take notice is that everything is under the direction of the DNA. So you now have the gene as shown, and in one segment it's the DNA, and inside the DNA are the nitrogen bases that will comprise the DNA nucleotide and the RNA nucleotide. So all of these intricate, complex parts of the body will only move if there is energy. That's how important energy is in our body. So let us build up our energy, maintain our energy, regenerate our energy in at least four major ways: through food, through sunlight, right? Uh, Through rest, and through trusting in God. If you have any question, feel free to email me at arleimperio@gmail.com. That's ARLE Imperio, IMPERIO. Or you can further watch the other videos in my YouTube channel, which is Arle Imperio. So after watching any video for at least 3 minutes, then you click like, you can give your comment, and you may even share it and even subscribe. That's the way YouTube wants it to be, because YouTube is video based and everything is based on the video shared and the video watch. So this is your friend, Dr. Arle Macasiano Imperio, always reminding everyone that God is the only source of our energy and power. And God bless you, and let us have more life and energy for our body health and for us to share to others. And always remember that prevention is always better and even preferred than getting the best cure.